Salford City Radio with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi. 94.4 FM Salford City Radio with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, on a Friday sports show, bringing you all the news from the local area and around the world. And we've brought you some of the world's best athletes, sports people, coaches, sports psychologists, many people across a broad range of areas related to sport. And also we've talked to people in the field of mental health, in psychology. Our segment that features some of the most prominent people in the field of psychology and related fields has been really fascinating. Today we have a really fascinating guest who's going to give us a bit of an insight into her work and what she does. Some tremendous work that she does and the organisation she works for does as well. Michelle Carney, CEO of the Special Olympics GB. Welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Thanks, Jim. Great to be here.
Fantastic. So our listeners are wondering, what does a CEO do, Michelle, for the Special Olympics? Can you sort of describe your role? I'm sure that we could take, it's endless really, but a bit of an overview of what you do.
Well, I mean, what don't I do? A CEO role in a small charity with a big reach is a different proposition from a normal CEO role. It means I'm a lot more hands-on. So Special Olympics is Great Britain is currently Great Britain's best kept secret. So not a lot of people know about us. More people are more familiar with the Paralympics. So we have the Olympics, Paralympics and Special Olympics. Olympics, Paralympics are about one major event, about elite sport, big event every 4 years. And Special Olympics, we're part of the Olympic family, but we are for all abilities, and we also offer outside COVID time competitions day in, day out. So it was set up in the United States 52 years ago in 1968 by an incredible woman called Eunice Kennedy Shriver. She's the sister of John F. Kennedy and part of the Kennedy clan. And they had a sister, Rosemary, who had an intellectual disability. And Eunice saw how her sister was treated, and their father thought they could fix her disability by paying to give her a lobotomy. Wow. And that obviously didn't work out very well, and Rosemary was never seen in public again. So Eunice had a real fire in her belly and said, anybody who lives with an intellectual disability should be able to take full part in life and community and in sport. So she set up the Special Olympics those many years ago in the US, where it's massive now. So Special Olympics are currently in over 190 different countries and territories across the world, and globally there are over 6.5 million registered athletes and unified partners across the world. So my role as CEO of Great Britain is that I run and I look after Special Olympics in Great Britain as part of that global network. Where we are in Great Britain is that we have 1.5 million people who live in Great Britain with an intellectual disability, so intellectual learning disability. But we are only currently working with around 11,000 of those as athletes. So we have a lot to do. As a charity, we don't enjoy the same luxuries of finance that the states get. We're a charity and we have to fight for every pound, so we're fairly limited in what we can do currently. But the more people know about us, the more we can do. So my job as a CEO is to, spent the last 2 years rebuilding our organisation. We were established here in the UK in 1978, so we've been around 42 years. And I didn't know about Special Olympics in Great Britain until I saw this job. And I should know, because I started out in disability sport. I've worked at all levels of sport, professional, international, community, charity, worked with governments, and I didn't know we existed. So we have a lot of work to do. So ultimately my role is to, bring the organisation to the forefront of people's minds, to unlock resources, to make sure our athletes and anybody with an intellectual disability can take part in sport. And, we genuinely transform people's lives using sport as a tool.
Now, it's really interesting stuff, and I'm sure our listeners are really interested to know more. At the moment, obviously, we're in sort of, it's a pre-record and sort of we're back into lockdown, at least in the UK we are anyway. So, but generally speaking, what's the vision for you guys, Michelle, for our listeners, just to sort of clarify? You mentioned that there's no sort of specific tournament, it's sort of every day. So what's the vision to get people involved in sport? How does it sort of work, just to sort of, for our listeners to sort of understand a bit more about what it all entails?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes in. So we have a network of around about 120 clubs across England, Wales and Scotland, and those clubs will offer different sporting activities. We also really drive forward a unified leadership model, so we develop the skills of our athletes, and we use sport as a tool to develop confidence. So there is access to local level competitions, regional competitions, and every 4 years we will have a national games in Great Britain. That's the biggest event in the calendar, so we have a national summer games and then we have a national winter games. Sadly, with COVID, it was our big games were supposed to take place in Liverpool in 2021. We had to make a decision to postpone that to 22, and then Liverpool made a heartbreaking decision that they couldn't host it in 22. So I'm currently very busy trying to talk to other cities to see that we can have a major national games, because it's really important and our athletes really need something to look forward to. And what that kind of looks like, that we'd have 3,000-4,000 athletes competing in 18 different sports across a number of days. It's like the best party you will ever go to. And the beauty with Special Olympics is that we are about fun and friendship and enjoyment. So whilst it's competitive on the field, once they cross the finish line, it's about hugs and it's about, laughter and friendship and just sheer joy. So we also use the National Games as a qualification for World Games. So we have the World Games as well. And last year we took a team of 128 athletes out to Abu Dhabi for the World Games in March last year. Our athletes competed for Great Britain against 7,500 athletes across the world. So it was the world's biggest sporting event in 2019. And we finished 6th on the medal table.
Wow.
So, and until 2 days before the end, we were top of the medal table, and we're the only country in the top 50 to receive zero central government funding.
Wow.
We had to self-fund, so it cost over $500,000 to send the team out, and our regions and local volunteers all had to fundraise in order for our team to compete. So we have an ambition. So in terms of where we're going, I absolutely trying to nail down a major national games in 22. We have, because we need to qualify for the next World Games, which is in Berlin in 2023. And we have our World Winter Games, so we have winter sports as well, in Kazan in Russia in January 22. So this is why we need to get back to activity. And I'm talking with Downing Street and the government about the potential for Great Britain to host a World Games here.
Wow.
Now that would be the cherry on the cake, if you like. Ireland were the first country to host a World Games outside the US in 2003, and that completely transformed life for anybody who lives with an intellectual disability and their families in Ireland. It's part and parcel of, my parents live in Ireland, and I knew about Special Olympics because it's just on the radio and it's just part and parcel of life. So the investment that Special Olympics Ireland get far outweighs what we currently get. But that's linked to, people don't know about us. But once people know about us, then they absolutely love us. Because our athletes are just the most joyous people you will ever meet. And we have a really important role to play. So lots of really good things to look forward to, but we just need to get through this extraordinarily tricky and challenging time.
Absolutely. And what are the sports that are just obviously not going to name every sport, but generally speaking, just for our listeners, what are some of the sports at the Special Olympics? Michelle, is it similar to the Olympics sports? What are some of the sports that you guys have?
Yeah, we currently offer 28 different sports across Great Britain, and so from team sports, so football, basketball, what else? Cricket, gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics, artistic gymnastics, through to individual, so athletics, swimming, equestrian, golf. So there's a whole load of opportunities there for whatever ability. So the difference between Special Olympics and Paralympics. So in Paralympics, you are divisioned on your disability. So whatever your disability, that's how you are divisioned. In Special Olympics, we division on your ability. So if you can run 100 meters in 20 seconds, I can't. But if you can, you're going to be competing against people who can run at a similar speed. Okay. So it's really fair. Yes. So for a World Games, we don't take the best of the best. We're not about elite sport. We do have that as well, but it's about the opportunity for anybody with an intellectual disability to be selected to represent their country. And the stories of our athletes are incredible. One guy, Harry, lives in Scotland. When he was born, his parents were told he would never walk, talk, or even sit up. Right, so before we went to the World Games, Harry and I we did an interview with another athlete, Amy, on Sky Sunrise, and went to the studio, and Harry went on to win a silver medal in the judo at the World Games in Abu Dhabi last year. So, from being told they would never amount to anything or do anything, he's there representing Great Britain in a tracksuit, walking out in the opening ceremony to 55,000 people in a stadium, and it's being live streamed all across the world. I'm like, wow, that's and there are similar stories for all of our athletes. It really is transformative, not just for athletes but for their families as well. Just
out of interest, Michelle, how do the athletes get involved? I mean, what's the sort of process in an athlete getting involved in the Special Olympics?
So it's generally been because we need to really develop our local club infrastructure. We're an organisation which is run by volunteers. We have an army of over 4,000 amazing, dedicated volunteers. And actually a lot of clubs are set up by family members who have been frustrated at the lack of opportunities and services for their child or for their siblings. So if people want to find out, they can go on our website and you just look in your area, and then we can give you the details of your local club. So we are working in the next 18 months to really strengthen our club infrastructure. There's a good network in the northwest as well. So there's lots of different opportunities around the northwest. So it's very much word of mouth, and we just need to. The more people know about us, the more support we'll get, which means that we can do more and we can, get involved more. And through lockdown, we did a Halloween athlete fun night last week on Zoom. So our athletes absolutely love to dance and do Zumba, and they all dressed up in amazing Halloween competition costumes, and we just had a great night because that social aspect is the bit they've all been missing. So
absolutely, no, that's really powerful stuff. And I mean, you mentioned before about looking for a city. Obviously, it's in discussions with different cities. because obviously, I mean, you mentioned there Liverpool. Did you say Liverpool had sort of withdrawn from the?
They sadly couldn't host it in 22.
I can imagine obviously a lot of challenges with the pandemic and so on and so forth. But in terms of cities, like what? I mean, you've spoken to some cities. You're not suggesting you tell us who you've spoken to, but I suppose we've got people listening now. What is it you want to do, Michelle? If we've got, say, policymakers, and this show goes out, and Salford's got a wide reach. The northwest of England, it's sporting tradition. There's sporting establishments everywhere. It's a proud part of the country. Sport means a lot to people, and we've seen just how the British public gets behind our athletes whenever we do have a big tournament. What are sort of some of the requirements? Obviously, I know it's, we're in the middle of it. Obviously, COVID is going to influence things, but what are you looking to do, Michelle? If you have got anyone listening who sort of might be able to sort of not necessarily help out, at least put it on their radar.
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised in Manchester, so I grew up in Stretford, next to the Shrine. That could be divisive for your listeners, but I'm a Reg through and through. So I know the tradition and the importance of sport, and how the community of the Northwest and Manchester, Liverpool really get behind their city. So the thing with the Special Olympics Games is, we need venues to be able to host, 14 to 20 different sports, and we can be flexible with those. It needs to be financially underwritten, so that there is an element of funding, but when you compare it to what it costs to host a Commonwealth Games or an Olympics, I mean, it's peanuts in comparison, but it's a lot of money for us. It would cost 2 to 3 million to host a national games, but again, we can be flexible with that. But it brings a direct economic impact to the city. So the last National Games was held in Sheffield in 2017. That was the second time they had hosted it, and the direct economic impact was over £3.5 million in direct spend, in terms of the hospitality and the hotel industry around there. So, the facilities are there. So Manchester's a fantastic city, and I've worked with the Mayor Andy Burnham before in my previous life. I set up the Lancashire County Cricket Club Foundation. So, but I also know that local authorities in particular are struggling massively with budgets. So it is a tricky time. However, 22, to do this event in 22 would be the best coming out party ever. It's the most fun you'd ever have. So we have an opening ceremony, closing ceremony. Opening ceremony of Special Olympics Games is the most fun. Our athletes absolutely love to dance. So we need venues, we need accommodation, we need just event infrastructure. So, transport to and from, accessible transport, just anything for a normal major event. And I know Manchester and the Northwest has that in spades.
Absolutely.
You've done an incredible job with the Commonwealth Games, and so Manchester is somewhere that we would certainly be looking at as a potential World Games host, and looking for conversations, because it would be great to bring something up north,
absolutely.
The government about levelling up and just kind of sharing it around the country, because we go from the top of Scotland across to Wales down to the depths of the whole of Great Britain. So and Manchester's just a friendly place, isn't it? So,
absolutely, no, for sure. And like you says, I mean, there's definitely the facilities in Manchester, and the public, the people of Manchester, for sure love their sport, and I'm sure would get behind it and sort of get involved. That's for sure. I suppose the other thing is as well, what's it mean to the athletes, to be able to compete on a world stage. Obviously, you've sort of been in your role now, Michelle. You've sort of seen it firsthand. What's it mean to them to be able to sort of, like you said before, walk out to thousands of people or whatever, even if it's sort of televised in some way? What's it like for the athletes to compete? What's it mean to them?
Honestly, Jim, it's just the most incredible transformation. So we've had, and I've seen it with my own eyes in the 2 and a bit years that I've been lucky enough to be in this role. Athletes, their transformation, their physical and mental transformation is unbelievable. Like it's developing of confidence, the ability to make friends. Some have gone from being relatively non-verbal to having full-on conversations. So they have friends around the country. So all our athletes will tell a similar story, a heartbreaking story of life before Special Olympics. They were bullied, they were socially excluded, they didn't have any friends, bottles thrown at them, some just didn't want to live. Like that social isolation that a lot of us are feeling now, that's their lives. That was their lives. And I say, what Special Olympics brought? I have fun, I have friends, I've developed my confidence. We now, I work with our athlete leadership team, and I have athletes speaking on global stages to major corporate partners, because we're just smashing down the stigma and perceptions people have, and mainly because of ignorance, because they don't know. I'm like, actually, to have a conversation with someone with an intellectual disability is the best conversation you'll have. And when we talk about disability inclusion, we often think automatically to physical accessibility. And I'm like, actually, no. Like, how accessible is your foyer? How accessible is, disability inclusion is not just putting a ramp in. How are you communicating to this huge population of people so it's easy to understand? So the transformation of Special Olympics is not just about the athletes themselves, it's their families. So for families who have fought their entire lives for basic services for their children or siblings, to now have an organisation which goes, you can be anything that you want to be. And I see my job is very much, and my team's job is to create environments and platforms where our athletes can share their own stories, because the athlete voice is really important and it really needs to be heard. So that's what you can tell, I'm really passionate about it.
Absolutely,
and, the joy of Special Olympics means that we use sport, and sport is so powerful as a tool which just brings everybody together. Our athletes, majority of them had never been on a plane, never been out of the country, and there we were flying them to Abu Dhabi.
Wow,
a different culture, and what that brings when they're all getting on. It was so magical at the airport. All in their GB tracksuits, and people going, "Oh, what's going on?" We're like, "Oh yeah, I'm competing in the World Games," and it was just unlike anything. So for me, and I genuinely believe, and I talk about this a lot, it's the best job in sport, because what an absolute privilege to be able to just bring so much joy, and just what seems like a really simple thing has a transformative effect on so many different areas of life.
Absolutely.
And all our athletes have incredible stories, as do their families.
No, it's really inspiring, I think, and I think obviously it's really, really, really inspiring. Like you mentioned there, just sort of having the sort of GB tracksuit and competing in sort of different parts of the world, and that's really, really powerful stuff. And I mean, yourself, Michelle, what's your sort of vision? Obviously, you've got a lot of ability in terms of to do what you do. You're very passionate. You've got a lot of experience. You sort of the perfect person to drive things forward, I think, for sure. But what's your vision? Where do you sort of see? What would you like to see happen? I know it's not easy, obviously, at the moment. The sort of the COVID situation it makes things really challenging and difficult in terms of planning and so on and so forth. But what would be your vision for the future for the Special Olympics GB?
Yeah, I mean, it's ambitious, but we absolutely need to be reaching more of the 1.5 million people who live with an intellectual disability. So in order to do that, we have to have investments and the right level of funding, and not scrapping around for small grants, which is what we kind of do. And we're in survival mode at the moment, and I've had to give notice on our offices because we can't afford to pay it, you know. So the work that we're doing behind the scenes is to really get us around the table. So I want people, my vision is, when people talk about Special Olympics, I want people to know what that is, to understand our brand. A World Games here would fundamentally transform lives. My ultimate ambition is that a child who is born with an intellectual disability, whether that's visible Down syndrome or not, is not handed to their parent with an apology. So our parents that I've spoken to, that's a really tough conversation. I'm so sorry your son, I'm so sorry your daughter has Down syndrome or whatever. I want it to be the same now as the impact that Paralympics had. You know, so if a child is now born without a limb, 9 times out of 10 you've seen a Paralympian running with a blade and winning gold medals. You know that anything is still possible. So I want, in the future, you know, if a child is born with Down syndrome or whatever, that they're handed, you know, the mother is handed the child going, congratulations, you have beautiful baby girl, baby boy. And you've seen images of our athletes who are surviving and thriving and winning gold medals and traveling around the world and, you know, holding down jobs and relationships and all of that. So that, for me, I just want that to be just a normal part of life, you know, that whole societal change. There are 94% of people who live with an intellectual disability are unemployed, and that's unacceptable. So one of the things I'm starting to do is develop a social enterprise. So that will be run by athletes and staffed by athletes, paid athletes. So, and that's about developing them as individuals. And one of our athlete leaders, Niall Geit, started out with this idea of drawing 26 football stadiums to raise £260 for Special Olympics. He's currently drawn over 100 stadiums and sporting environments. They've gone all over the world. He's raised over £5,000. When I first met Niall, a year last January, he was pretty much non-verbal in meetings. He used chatties cards, so, you know, with an image to show how he was feeling, happy, sad, excited. Now he's been interviewed on ESPN Global, ESPN UK, he's been on BBC News 24, he's been interviewed on radio. So we are now taking him, and he's going to be our first global Special Olympics social entrepreneur. And we're taking his business idea, you know, his fundraising idea, and turning that into a business. So what I'm really wanting to do is attract some seed funding, you know, to really grow that social enterprise, so that so employers can see how valuable it is to have people with an intellectual disability within the workforce. Because it does really make a difference. If you want to be truly inclusive, then, you know, walk the walk.
Absolutely.
Don't just say, oh, that's lovely, and not do anything. So we just want to show how much of a benefit it is just to be truly inclusive. So that's my vision, is a World Games that we're well funded. We have, so anybody anywhere in Great Britain knows how to access sport, you know, recreation, you know, support infrastructures, know that they can get support into work, get leadership opportunities to share their stories. And, you know, we're making headway. You know, Downing Street, the government are developing their new disability strategy, and you know, really fortunate that, you know, I kind of bulldozed my way in and said, actually, we need, you know, intellectual disabilities voice around there. And, you know, the team at Downing Street have been brilliant. And I said, why don't you just come and speak to our athlete leaders directly? And that's what they did, and they had the best time.
Wow,
you know, they're like, oh, this is really good. And I'm like, just, you know, we just need to just break down some barriers and make it easy and fun. You know, life is hard enough, isn't it?
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
Why don't we just have a bit of fun and joy and share the joy of our athletes?
Absolutely, that's really powerful stuff, Michelle. And if anyone is listening and sort of you mentioned before the website, Michelle, if they sort of want to get in touch and know more and just more awareness or get involved in some way, are you okay to sort of share the website details or any other sort of...
Yeah, so our website is www.specialolympicsgb.org.uk. You can find us on Twitter and on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I can connect you in with the right people. But yeah, just follow, and we're on Facebook, and that's a lively group. So you kind of see how we go on that. So, but yeah, we are athlete led, and we make sure that our athletes are front and centre of everything we do. And yeah, and it's a great privilege to do it. So if anybody would like to get involved or support with any aspect, that's from building a website, or because we need a new website, you'll see when you go on it. Just host, being part of a social enterprise, knows anybody who can put some capital investment in, just all of these things. I would say as a very small team. So the more we do, and actually you'll get more out of it than you think. You think you're putting some stuff in, but it will make a massive transformative change, and our athletes deserve to be treated as fairly as their Paralympic and Olympic counterparts.
Absolutely, it's really powerful stuff. So I really want to thank you, Michelle, for coming on board the show. It's been really fascinating, and no doubt our listeners have sort of really, been really fascinating for them as well. And hopefully we do, raise some awareness, and there's people listening who do get involved. So, Michelle, thanks for being on the show. It was great to have you on board. That was Michelle.
Oh.
Sorry, Michelle. Yeah.
Yeah, no, just say thanks so much, and just this is all really important in just raising the awareness and just getting that recognition that Special Olympics, I've heard a bit about that. So it's really important, and our athletes and those that are listening, hey, it's always great for them to get a shout out, but it's really important. But most importantly, it's really fun. So do appreciate the opportunity and the ability to share.
Absolutely,
our movement.
Yeah. Certainly do keep us posted of any sort of events that sort of materialise. Obviously, difficult situation we find ourselves in the world at the moment, but we remain optimistic that we sort of move forward and at some point. But I really want to thank you for coming aboard the show. Michelle, it's been really interesting and intriguing, and wish all the athletes all the best too. It's tremendous that they're involved and to represent their country is no higher honour in sport. So all the best to them as well, and we sort of will sort of definitely keep an eye out for you guys, and hopefully you get the city to host the event. So that was Michelle Carney, CEO of Special Olympics GB, giving us a fascinating insight into the Special Olympics on Salford City Radio, Salford City 94.4 FM. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, the Friday Sports Show.